Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Second Cup of Coffee. Pastor Tom with you here with Brandon Wilcox, who is our production extraordinaire who makes everything look good, sound good. And actually, I don't know if you've noticed, but over the past several weeks, we've had a new background, and Brandon is the brainchild behind all of that, so thank you for that. We are going to have a conversation today based on what we've been talking about this month, Ask ASK. And last week, Brandon, I gave my own personal testimony about a no that I had between God and I. Even though I was following what he told me to do, there was still that no between us. And so I want to kind of follow up on that a little bit. It's going to be a little bit different than maybe the way we've been headed. But when you've asked God before something, and I'm just going to, I know I'm putting you on the spot. It's not what we talked about, but it's just kind of bubbling up in my spirit. Have you ever been in a spot where you ask God and then you realize later, like, I wasn't really asking him for a point of obedience. I was just kind of trying to get some advice that maybe I would kind of, I mean, I'll take it or I'll leave it. Does it work out in my life or what? And maybe you don't have a specific, but have you ever kind of found yourself in that place, like where it wasn't?
I was looking for, I think I've come across that a lot. And I think it was more like I was looking for the answer that I wanted.
There you go. It's a great way to say
it.
Right.
So I wasn't necessarily asking the Lord like, hey, should I do this or not do this? It was more of like, if I hear what I want to hear, then I know.
Then that's my confirmation.
That's my confirmation. And that's good enough for me. If I don't hear what I want to hear, I don't, not to sound like bad, but I would just force his hand. I would just force.
Okay, so that was going to be my follow-up question was, what do you do when it's silent?
Yeah, Do
you take that as a yes and then just kind of force the issue?
What you do when it's silent is you go back to the last thing that you've heard and you stay put.
I get that, but
I've never...
I'm talking about what we do sometimes, not that we learn through you've learned that, I've learned that through our own impatience, our own impetuousness, our own, dare I say, pride, like we're going to push the hand of God, right? And I get where you're going because that's where we need to end up. But sometimes, and I've heard this said, people say, I never ask a question I don't already know the answer to. That didn't work with God.
Right.
Because I'm not asking for an opinion or advice. I'm asking the creator of the universe, what is your thought on this subject? Yeah. So I want to explore that a little bit. And today in our conversation, I'm sorry to spring this on you, but we talked about this off camera. Jesus says to his disciples, let's go to the other side of the lake. Yeah. He gets in the boat and goes to sleep. So unless he's a sleep talker, and I'm not going to be blasphemous, he's asleep. Yeah. A windstorm comes up, we're going to perish. They finally freak out enough to wake up Jesus. He gets up and rebukes the wind and the waves, and he says, basically, why do you have such little faith? When I'm in a situation and I have heard a word, now everything is against me, and God seems to be silent. Mm-hmm. How do I walk in faith? Because for us, he doesn't always wake up and speak.
Right. I'm most of the time not.
That's been my experience, right? Like I told you, we're not in a harsh way, but I know where I'm headed. Yeah. We're in the same boat. I'm going to get there, and so are you, as long as you don't get out of the boat, which is always an option. Yeah. Let's sidetrack there for a second. How many times have you seen people shipwreck their life and their faith by trying to walk on water when Jesus is asleep in the boat and not out on the water?
I think that's what we see most of the time. People self-sabotage themselves.
Then they call it faith, right?
They call it faith, but it's really just being, I am not patient, or I don't want to wait on the Lord, or it's the faith needs action, and so they jump out.
Right, and we can biblically prove that, right? Yeah. Show me your faith, and I'll show you my works. So I'm stepping out of the boat, but the problem is he's asleep in the boat, and you have a word.
Yeah, and it can be dangerous.
Right.
And then where do you go once that doesn't work out? So what's that conversation look like with the Lord? Is it Now you don't trust the Lord because you maybe didn't hear right. Now you're not trusting yourself, and now the next time the Lord speaks to you, you're like, oh, I don't know, because the last time it didn't work out right. And it was really because this place of obedience.
Okay, so let's go back. That was a little bit of a sidebar there for you guys. Don't get out of the boat if he's not on the water.
Yeah.
If he's asleep in the boat, you wait in the boat because he's in the boat. We want to be where Jesus is because that's where the peace is. There's enough peace in him that he's sleeping.
Yeah.
So walk me through, if I came to you and I said, Brandon, I have this, I believe I heard a word from God, but since I've started to walk in it, everything seems to be blowing me the other way. Nothing seems to be working out. But I still believe God's in it. How would you instruct me to walk in peace? Because there's enough peace in the boat for him to sleep, so it must be available.
I would say, well, what's funny is like some people would say that when you get a word of the Lord and you start to get resistance, it's because it's definitely a word of the Lord and you need to walk that out.
Right.
I'm not sure I always like agree that it's like you're going to get resistance. I think that the Lord knows that resistance is there, and I think that's part of the walking out the faith. Like he's walking you through something that okay, I didn't share this with you off screen, but last night in my prayer, the Lord showed me what was going on in my life currently. I saw myself like trying to run, but there were these straps here, and it was like almost like a parachute, right?
Okay.
Pulling.
Yeah.
But I saw that as I was going forward, I could like pull off one of the straps and release, and then I could walk faster, and then pull off another strap and walk. And it's like there's this place of resistance that the Lord, in that resistance, he's dealing with stuff with me. And I'm stripping away these things that I don't know that could come off without the resistance. And I'm walking in a place of faith because I have this word of the Lord. And like currently right now, the Lord has said, stay put.
Okay.
In some of the areas in my life.
Right.
And it's a struggle because I feel like I definitely could go out and do better. But
you could get out of the boat.
I could get out of the boat.
Walk on water.
And walk on water.
And call it faith.
And call it faith.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's a place right now where he's like, I need you to walk through this because you're stripping away things that have been a part of your life for a long time that I don't know that could come off without this resistance.
Wow. I think that right there encapsulates the training aspect that God takes us through before he releases us into the purpose.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And and I think sometimes we argue with God about deliverance that should happen. He's like, I'm using that parachute to build your resistance, not to me, but to build your muscle.
Yeah.
And I'm learning this, Brandon, that because I can do something doesn't mean that I should.
Right.
Because I don't have enough muscle underneath, spiritual muscle, to run out or to make it the long way, right? I can do it once because I didn't ask you to do it once.
Yeah.
It says in the Bible that he wants us to bring to a place of bringing forth fruit 100-fold, but it says in endurance, which I mean says to me for the long haul. Like the word that you have will give fruit in different seasons. But it's a longer process than just getting to the other side of the lake.
Yeah.
Talk about this because I think it's a different aspect, but it's as much grace in it for other people. Sometimes he just says rest. I'm asleep, you sleep.
Yeah.
I already said where we're going.
Yeah.
But I look at all the circumstances, the wind and the waves and all the reasons we're about to sink in this boat, and you're asleep. And there's a place, and I think you have a revelation of it that I'm growing in and I hope to have, of just kind of, not in a weird way, but getting down and literally laying with Christ in the boat and like, if you're going to sleep, I'm going to sleep.
Yeah.
How do I get there? Because, I mean, if you can, how would you walk me through trying to get to that place of rest, even in the midst of the storm?
I think because of so much in my life of trying to go out and walk on the water, so many times, and so many times of failure, and so many times of just like I self-analyze and I go back and I critique every word, and I'm just like, what did I do wrong? How am I missing this? And all along, the Father's just like, all I've ever asked of you was to just let me serve you and hang out with me and just rest in this. He wants to take care of us. He wants to be our provider. He wants to be our healer. He wants to be our everything. And yet we're over here just like, yes, but that's not good enough. I want to serve you. I want to do this. I got to do that. And he is asking for, and we talk about like Mary at the feet of Jesus, right? And Martha's doing really busy around the house at the same time. And he makes a memorial of Martha. He says, remember this, you know? And Martha, or Mary, I'm sorry, Mary. Yeah. He says, look at Mary, look at what she's done. Yeah. She's anointed. Yeah. She's anointed me. She poured out everything that she has. Right. And I think there's a place of intimacy there where we give up our striving, we give up our, I can do this for you, Lord. Wow. And it's a place of obedience, right? Because we talk about obedience is better than sacrifice. Yeah. And you've hammered that in over and over again about obedience. Yeah. And rest doesn't mean you do nothing. Rest is a position.
But it is an obedience, isn't it?
It's an obedience.
Because he doesn't make any, I mean, even in the New Testament, he talks about the Sabbath. And he talks about, Paul says you say one day or another, but he doesn't say don't take one of them. Yeah. Right. But anyway, it's funny you say that, because you didn't know this either. I just had a conversation with my mom. She said almost the same thing. She said, I tell people now at my age, don't waste your life trying to work for God like I did. Just find out what he wants to do and get in on it. Yeah. I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of wisdom to that. Yeah. Like, okay, I'm going to the other side. And if you see me sleeping and resting, rest. Yeah. If you see me rowing, row. If you see me walking on the water, walk on the water. But whatever you do what you see me do, because I only do what I see my Father doing. Yeah. So, to wrap this up and to wrap this series up, ask, what should I be asking for if instead of peace, I'm in turmoil in this boat? Because when we look at the story, I don't know if it's good to ask, hey, get up. Yeah. He obviously, he's not, bothered by it, but they're like, hey, do something. Yeah, right. You know, we're going to die. And he seems to be casual about it. He speaks to the storm peace. And I think when we're dealing with turmoil or tragedy in our lives, we have to be able to not allow our minds. Paul talks about renewing our mind. We can't let our mind take over and just go to the worst place. God can do things in a moment that we could never imagine. And I always share this with people. I'm like, you can tell God how you want some things to play out, and when he does it, it never is how you thought it was going to be. Ever, ever, ever. But there's a place where you have to let go, and you have to let him be Jehovah, fill in that blank. You have to let him be Jehovah Nisi. You have to let him be Jehovah Rapha. And, you know, we went through healing with Liz, you know, being radically healed. And she had to lay down her healing, and that this is no longer my identity. Come on. That's not who I am. Right. And she had to start going through and saying, what does heaven say about me? Wow. And that's, I think, in that place of whether it be finances, whether it be healing, whether it be just trauma in your life, you cannot allow those things to be your identity. You have to go back to see, what does the Father say? What does he say that I am? So to summarize this is what I hear. What I need to ask him is this: God, Father, I'm not going to try to fill in the blank anymore of what I think you need to do. I'm going to trust you to fill in the blank of who you want to be in this situation, and I'm going to trust that. And that's what it is. He wants to be that. Wants to be. Yeah. I think you got the word of the Lord. Thank you, Brandon. It was a little bit different than what we talked about, but I'm grateful because there is a wisdom and a depth in you that I appreciate both personally, and I think they're getting to see it here on the second cup of coffee. If you're in that boat and he's sleeping, it's okay. He knows where you're going. Just don't fill in the blank. Don't get out of the boat. Wait on him. Ask the Father. Give you a verse. I'll keep them in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on me. If you have anything you pray, say, Father, help me keep my mind stayed on you. And I'm going to walk in peace till we get to the other side. We love you. God bless you. And we'll talk to you soon.